They say the Wild West was born the moment a gun was drawn in anger. Not during a war, not on a battlefield, but on a dusty street under a burning sun, when two men realized there would be no words left, only a decision. One hand hovered near cold steel. One heartbeat stretched into eternity. And when the trigger was pulled, the West would never be the same again. Tonight, we travel back to that moment. To the first gunfight, not as legend, but as a turning point. This is the story of when a cowboy pulled the trigger and changed history. Before gunfights became legends, the American frontier was a place of silence more than sound. Wide plains, endless skies, towns that were barely more than wooden buildings nailed together by hope and fear. In those early days, a gun was not a symbol of power. It was a tool, carried for protection against wolves, bandits, or the unknown miles between settlements. Most men who wore a revolver never wanted to use it against another human being. Pulling a trigger wasn't glory, it was consequence. Disputes were settled with fists, or words, or sometimes simply by leaving town and never coming back. But the frontier was changing. More people arrived. More money flowed. More land was claimed. And where pressure builds, conflict follows. Picture a frontier town at the edge of civilization. One main street, a saloon with swinging doors, a general store, a sheriff's office with one star nailed crookedly to the wall. This town had no name worth remembering. Many didn't. What mattered was what it represented. Order trying to survive in chaos. Cattle drives passed through. Miners spent gold as fast as they dug it out. Guns were everywhere but rarely drawn. Until one afternoon. The first gunfight wasn't between heroes and villains. It was between two ordinary men. One was a working cowboy, dust-covered, sunburned, tired of being pushed aside. The other was a man who believed respect came from fear. Their disagreement was small by modern standards. A debt, an insult, a claim over land or cattle. But in a place where reputation was survival, small things mattered. Words were exchanged. Voices rose. The town watched. No one stepped in, because everyone understood what was happening. Here's the part legends often skip: the silence. Before the gun was drawn, there was hesitation. Not fear, but calculation. Both men knew the rules, even before rules existed. Whoever reached first might live. Whoever missed might die. The cowboy felt sweat roll down his spine. His hand hovered near the grip, not shaking but heavy. In that moment, time slowed. This wasn't about winning. It was about deciding who would walk away alive. The shot echoed like thunder. Not loud compared to modern weapons, but loud enough to freeze the town. People ducked. Windows rattled. Horses screamed. And when the smoke cleared, one man was on the ground. Dead or dying, it hardly mattered. What mattered was that it had happened. A gun had been used, not as defense, but as resolution. The line had been crossed. There was no cheering, no applause, only shock. The cowboy stood still, gun lowered, breathing hard. He hadn't imagined this moment. He hadn't trained for it. He would carry it forever. The town didn't erupt into chaos, but it changed instantly. Something invisible had broken. People now understood that disputes could end with death, that guns weren't just tools anymore. They were answers. In the weeks that followed, towns across the frontier whispered about what happened. Stories spread faster than facts. Details changed. Motives were exaggerated. But the lesson was clear. If one man could settle a dispute with a gun, any man could. Sheriffs tightened rules. Saloon owners watched hands more closely. Men began practicing quick draws not for survival, but for reputation. The Wild West didn't become violent overnight. It learned violence. That first gunfight didn't create the myth of the Wild West, but it gave it a heartbeat. Soon, stories weren't about farming or trading. They were about who was fastest, who was toughest, who would draw first. Gunfighters became characters, then legends, then exaggerations. But behind every legend was a real moment, a real hesitation, and a real human cost. The cowboy who pulled the trigger didn't become famous. He didn't ride into the sunset. He stayed quiet. Some say he left town soon after. Others say he stayed but was never the same. Because here's the truth rarely told. Pulling the trigger doesn't end a story. It starts a lifetime of remembering. That first gunfight wasn't about violence. It was about choice. It marked the moment the frontier realized that power could be taken in seconds and lost just as fast. From that day forward, the West would be shaped not only by courage and survival, but by fear and reputation. The gunfight became a language, one spoken without words. Every duel that followed, every standoff, every legend traces its roots back to this moment. Not the gun, not the bullet, but the decision. A decision made under a burning sun, on a dusty street, by a man who didn't know he was changing history.
Time and land.
When we talk about the Wild West, we often celebrate the drama. But the real story lies in the silence before the shot, in the breath held,
The West did not
in the
explode
moment
into
when a man
chaos.
realizes
It quietly
there is no
learned what
turning
fear
back.
could do.
That's where history lives. And that is when the West was truly born.